Thank you for joining us on the program today. Welcome. I'm Layo Adegoke. If all goes according to plan in South Africa, the country is expecting to receive the first shipment of 1 million coronavirus vaccines on Monday, February 1st from the Serum Institute in India. Now, this arrangement is outside the continental vaccine acquisition effort under the COVAX initiative, and the first beneficiaries would be health workers. The plan is to get as many as 1.25 million health workers vaccinated before others in a 3-stage vaccine rollout plan. Health Minister Dr. Zweli Mkhize and his advisory committee briefed the nation last night on progress made and what to expect.
It's been a somewhat intriguing journey to this point for South Africa, filled with finger-pointing about delays, debates, miscommunication and questions. But if all goes according to plan as presented by Health Minister Dr. Zweli Mkhize and his advisory committee, the first batch of anti-COVID vaccines will be in South Africa from India on the 1st of February.
1 million doses will leave India on Sunday, the 31st of January 2021, fly via Dubai and land at OR Tambo International Airport on Monday, the 1st of February 2021.
Ahead of the arrival of the much-anticipated COVID-19 vaccines, South Africa's healthcare sector is groaning under the strain of much higher number of confirmed cases in the country. Not only are the numbers much higher than experienced in the first wave of the epidemic in the country, the death toll is even much higher, and the government is worried. From the public to the private healthcare sector, the story or the picture is the same. The second wave of COVID-19 in South Africa has indeed seen figures as high as 21,000 new confirmed cases and over 800 deaths in a day. The daily figures still fluctuate and the pressure remains on the healthcare sector. Gauteng province still ranks as one of the top affected provinces.
I want to appeal to the people of our province, many of whom are returning to work. I want to appeal that let's do all the things that we can to ensure that we can manage where we are now, that is level 3, and ensure we continue to revive the economy. But our facilities have been coming tremendously under pressure.
Dr. Ifeanyi is a specialist physician at the Louis Pasteur Hospital in Pretoria, South Africa. He painted a picture of how hectic it has been.
There's almost no distinction between the private and the public healthcare in terms of the pressure of the cases and the numbers that we're seeing on a daily basis. Both sectors are quite saturated with patients, to the extent that some hospitals even use the parking lot to assess and treat patients, especially in the public sector. We're not sure whether we're peaking, but it's obvious that this second wave is much higher, much more severe than the first wave. Yes.
On Wednesday, South Africa's Healthcare Products Regulatory Authority, SAHPRA, approved the controlled compassionate use of the drug ivermectin for the treatment of COVID-19. Hopefully that, among other efforts, and now the arrival of the AstraZeneca vaccine from the Serum Institute of India next Monday, will bring a semblance of hope that things may get better. From Pretoria, South Africa, Betty Dibia, Channels Television News.
Meanwhile, Pfizer and BioNTech say their vaccine has been shown to be effective against coronavirus variants that emerged in Britain and South Africa. They say the virus mutations had only a small impact on the effectiveness of antibodies generated by the vaccine. According to Pfizer, it would continue to monitor its real-world effectiveness against these new strains. Now, earlier this week, Moderna said its vaccine was also effective against the British variant, but gave less protection against the South African one. It's developing a booster shot to tackle the mutation. Well, South Africa's president and chairperson of the African Union, Cyril Ramaphosa, has appealed to the World Trade Organization to waiver specific trade-related aspects of intellectual property rights, TRIPS, obligations related to the prevention and treatment of COVID-19 for a defined period. Addressing during the African COVID-19 Vaccine Financing and Deployment Strategy webinar, he said along with India, South Africa has proposed a TRIPS waiver in response to the pandemic. He also appealed to private business sector operators to put their money in the continent's efforts to roll out a vaccine program.
The chairman of the African Union and the president of South Africa, Cyril Ramaphosa, said while many economically developed countries have started rolling out vaccines against the deadly virus, the continent is only still preparing vaccination campaigns amid logistical and financial challenges. He, however, says strides are being made to ensure an adequate supply of vaccines on the continent.
We have secured a provisional 280 million vaccine doses for African countries through the task team. At least 50 million will be available from April to June 2021. These doses are from 3 major suppliers: Pfizer, AstraZeneca, through the Serum Institute of India, and Johnson & Johnson. Because of the high cost of vaccines, the task team has arranged with the Afri-Exim Bank to support member states who want to access these vaccines based on a whole-of-Africa approach.
He appealed to other local and international businesses to contribute what they can as well.
And we call upon other companies, both of African origin and offshore companies that do business in Africa, to contribute financially to enable African countries to immunize their target groups. We are calling on the World Trade Organization to waive specific TRIPS obligations related to the prevention and treatment of COVID-19 for a defined period. We need more countries to support this initiative. This would enable countries in Africa and elsewhere to access active pharmaceutical ingredients and benefit from technology transfer, including the know-how to manufacture vaccines in Africa at a much cheaper cost.
To date, Africa has more than 3.4 million confirmed cases of COVID-19 and has recorded nearly 87,000 COVID-related deaths. South Africa remains the hardest hit nation on the continent with 1.4 million confirmed cases and 42,550 COVID-related deaths as at Wednesday, January the 27th.
To other stories now, the U.S. is calling for the immediate withdrawal of Eritrean troops in Ethiopia's Tigray region. In a statement, the U.S. State Department says credible reports has emerged of their involvement in human rights abuses, including sexual violence and looting. This is its first statement on the conflict since the Joe Biden administration took office last week. However, both the Eritrean and Ethiopian governments deny that Eritrean forces are in Tigray, which borders Eritrea. Eritrea is a highly militarized one-party state ruled by President Isaias Afwerki since 1993. Well, let's bring in an international affairs analyst, Calvin Dack, for more on this story. Thank you, Calvin, for speaking to us. Now, Eritrea and Ethiopia have denied these reports of having Eritrean army on ground in Tigray, but the U.S. says it has credible reports. What do you make of this?
Well, I think that the kind of discrepancy between what the two governments are saying, Ethiopia and Eritrea, and what the United States is alleging, comes from the fact that there's a lack of sunshine there. There's an internet blackout. There are issues with journalists not being able to report what's on the ground. So I think that is why there's a discrepancy, but that is also an indication of one of the problems that is there, is that we don't know exactly what is happening there. And that is even more of a reason to try to resolve it, to see what is going on.
Well, since, this crisis in Tigray began in November, the Ethiopian government has rebuffed negotiations on this situation. What do you think is the likely response to this from the U.S.? Probably sanctions?
Well, I think in being realistic, unfortunately, and this is not just for the Biden administration, it's even worse for the Trump administration, but even prior administrations don't act as they could across the African continent. So in that sense, I don't expect that, especially given all the domestic concerns here, that will be a priority of the Biden administration. Now, with that being said, I do think that sanctions do remain a possibility. They are on the table. And if Biden's team does feel that will help bring this to a resolution, I don't think there would be any thing that would be something they wouldn't do. And we should also keep in mind that before Biden took office in November, there was a bipartisan push in Congress for sanctions. So we don't know exactly where this is going to go, but that goes to show you that some things, particularly United States relations abroad, transcend presidential administrations.
Well, speaking of the Biden administration, it's in its early days, and now this is one of its first statements on foreign affairs here in Africa. Do you think this is an indication of, future relations with East Africa and even, the general continent?
I don't think it should be read in that way exactly. I think that what this does demonstrate is that the United States foreign policy is going back to normal. Now, normal may have some, if normal wasn't perfect, but at least the U.S. was engaged in a way that I think was more productive than it had been under the Trump administration. And specifically, when it comes to situations like this, where we're looking at the protection of rights, protection of people involved in a conflict that's not well known in the United States, whereas the Trump administration turned a blind eye to it. The Biden administration is showing that the United States is trying to reclaim its position as, leader in the world. So I don't think it's specifically a message towards East Africa or Africa specifically, but I do think it's positive in that it shows the U.S. is ready to engage in the world again.
All right, then. Thank you so much, Calvin Dark, International Affairs Analyst. Thank you for joining us on the program.
Thank you.
Well, top UN officials have paid tribute to the courage and resilience of Somali citizens as the country marks its 30th anniversary since the outbreak of its civil war. UN Secretary-General's Special Representative for Somalia, James Swan, addressed the media at a virtual press conference in Mogadishu, during which he and other senior UN officials spoke about the range of the world body's support over the past year, but also for 2021. There are more than 20 UN agencies, funds and programs working with Somalis in a wide range of areas. These include long-term development and immediate humanitarian needs, as well as playing mediating roles in resolving differences and disputes. A former Central African Republic militia commander has appeared for the first time before the International Criminal Court, ICC, to face charges of war crimes and crimes against humanity. Mohamed Said Abdelkani was handed over to the ICC on Sunday by authorities in the Central African Republic. Presiding Judge Rosario Salvatore used today's session to verify the former rebel leader's identity and the language he prefers to use in following proceedings. He was also informed of the charges against him and his rights under the ICC Rome statutes. A limited number of people were allowed in the courtroom due to COVID-19 health measures. Now, the ICC issued a warrant of arrest for Mohamed Said Abdelkani on January 7, 2019. He is accused of war crimes and crimes against humanity that he allegedly committed in 2013 in the capital Bangui, following the overthrow of President Francois Bozize. The UN High Commissioner, Filippo Grandi, is asking the South Sudan government to commit firmly to security, to rule of law, and to good governance as an increased number of former refugees are returning home. Thousands of South Sudanese refugees have been returning home in the hopes that long-term stability will prevail after a revitalized peace agreement was signed in September 2018, but they face significant challenges. While many of them are returning to find their homes destroyed, weak social services, and in some cases, continued low-level violence amidst a global pandemic. Years of conflict have also severely crippled basic infrastructures and stretched humanitarian aid.
We have seen an increase in numbers of people returning. There's been a decline during the peak of the pandemic, but now it's picking up again ahead of the rainy season, which will occur in a few months. So this is an example of why it is important in this region to start thinking in terms of solutions. First of all, it is important, as I said in Juba, to the authorities that they commit firmly to security, to rule of law, to good governance, and then there is a massive development effort which is necessary so that all these people that are returning can send their kids to school, can have proper health services, can work, and do not remain unemployed and maybe depending on humanitarian aid. So this is just a beginning, but I think it is important in these trends to foresee and to think ahead.
In the meantime, the UN Refugee Agency, UNHCR, has launched a $100 million appeal to drive its 2021 strategic plan for refugee protection in African countries en route to the Mediterranean. The launch comes amid reports of the deaths of no less than 1,064 people in the central and western Mediterranean in 2020 alone. In its 2021 Strategic Action Plan and related funding appeal, the UNHCR says the international community must do more to save lives of refugees taking risky routes towards the Mediterranean.
Our strategy covers 25 countries that are related to those mixed movement of refugees and migrants. We may not be able to stop dangerous journey, but we do not believe in their inevitability. It is almost too late for us to intervene when people arrive in Libya or in the Western Sahara. Investment in better services and in protection must take place along the route and not only in coastal states.
We had several women that delivered their babies here that are the consequence of a rape. Several. And it's way too much. We have people that have shown us signs of violence all along their body. So basically what we do is not just a logistic exercise of evacuating people from a detention center to a free country. Is really regaining that sense of humanity.
But be they refugees or economic migrants, the overwhelming majority do not intend to cross the Mediterranean. They are in Libya as a rich oil country to try and get a living, make a living, send back remittances to their families. But they are struggling because of the war that has affected this country, that is just over, and because of the COVID pandemic that has hit very hard on their livelihood opportunities, these being already precarious jobs.
Egypt has announced plans to build an observation wheel by the Nile River. It's called Cairo Eye, the city's first observation wheel being built on the river. On Thursday, the government laid the foundation for the 120-meter wheel, a tourism mega project aimed at bringing in 2.5 million visitors a year.
Built on 20,000 square meters, Egypt's Cairo Eye is the city's first observation wheel being built on the River Nile. The 120-meter observation wheel is a tourism mega project aimed at attracting millions of tourists annually to the North African nation.
Our project is called Cairo Eye. It is a tourism entertainment project. Hopefully it will be an icon at the heart of Cairo. Cairo is proud of its large historical and touristic landmarks. As a private sector company, we try to provide for the Egyptian state and match their efforts by providing a tourism entertainment project at the heart of Cairo to serve and bring in more tourists and to serve all of tourism.
The project has an initial cost of around 500 million Egyptian pounds, which is about $30 million US, and is due to be completed in 2022.
This great project, for which we lay the foundation, comes as a great national project supported by the state, aimed at creating a strategic plan for tourism growth.
Visitors taking the eye for a ride should be able to see up to 50 kilometers far, with the Nile and several Cairo landmarks in view, read a statement by Hawaii. The eye should be the largest in Africa and the 5th largest globally. Egypt's vital tourism industry received a painful blow during the coronavirus pandemic, with visitor numbers dropping to 3.5 million last year from 13.1 million in 2019.
A World Heritage Site in northern Senegal that welcomes millions of migratory birds every year is now closed to visitors until further notice after 750 pelicans were found dead. The dead birds were found at the weekend and have been incinerated as a precaution. Bokar Thiam, the director of Senegal's parks, says some samples have been taken for screening as they hope to know the cause of death of the large water birds. Results are expected by the end of the week as Mr. Thiam ruled out the avian flu as a suspected cause. Separately, some 100,000 chickens were also culled this month following an outbreak of bird flu at a poultry farm in southern Senegal. And that's it on the program for today. Thank you for watching. I'm Layo Adegoke.